The outgoing Secretary of State Rex Tillerson offering some final words to his colleagues there at the State Department now that he has been fired.
To lead our foreign policy efforts and conduct the steady diplomacy that is the work of the department on behalf of the American people. None of this is possible without your daily contributions, from the mailroom to the 7th floor and all points in between, and all of our missions abroad. Our locally employed staff, our EFMs, eligible family members, to our ambassadors and chief of mission. Everyone is important to the delivery of the mission of the State Department. In preparing for the transition to the Secretary-designate, I compiled all of the policy decks that were developed by you and your colleagues that were first the basis for discussions at the National Security Council and ultimately with the President. These decks, of which I counted 13 since February the 1st of 2017, provide not only the policy basis but the strategies and tactics which guide the department's execution against those policies. I also provided the Secretary-designate recent decks which were under development to provide updates of how tactics may need to adjust to current circumstances. Because while the policies and the strategies should never change, we must constantly review how the tactics are delivering on the objectives. The country faces many challenges, in some instances perplexing foreign affairs relationships, and in other instances serious national security threats. In these times, your continued diligence and devotion to the State Department's mission has never been more necessary. As you go about your duties, each of you carrying out your individual responsibilities as well as your collective duty, it is my hope that you will be guided by and test your actions each day against the values that we have spoken about over this past year. First, to value the safety and security of yourselves, your loved ones, and your colleagues. Second, to maintain a commitment to accountability by first holding yourselves accountable so that you're able to hold others accountable, and that the positive environment of accountability is underpinned by honesty and integrity in all that you do. Never lose sight of your most valuable asset, the most valuable asset you possess, your personal integrity. Not one of you was gifted it. You were born with it. It belongs to you and always has and will belong to you and you alone. Only you can relinquish it or allow it to be compromised. Once you've done so, it is very, very hard to regain it. So guard it as the most precious thing you possess. And finally, I hope you will continue to treat each other with respect, regardless of the job title, the station in life, or your role. Everyone is important to the State Department. We're all just human beings trying to do our part. In closing, I'd like to ask that each of you undertake to ensure one act of kindness each day towards another person. This can be a very mean-spirited town. But you don't have to choose to participate in that. Each of us get to choose the person we want to be and the way we want to be treated and the way we will treat others. God bless you all, your loved ones. God bless America.
Rex Tillerson, the outgoing Secretary of State, his final words over at the State Department, strong words indeed, especially at the very end when he said pointedly this can be a very mean-spirited town. Then he was applauded, and he added, "But you don't need to choose to participate in that." Clearly a reference, I believe, to the way he was dismissed by the President of the United States. The President did not invite him in for a one-on-one meeting, did not sit down with him, didn't even call him on the phone to let him know that his tenure for more than a year as the Secretary of State, the top diplomat in the United States, was over. He simply tweeted, "It's over," and it was over. Rex Tillerson now saying goodbye to diplomats at the State Department. Elise Labin, our global affairs correspondent, is over at the State Department. It was not very subtle, those final words at the very end about this being a very mean-spirited town, Elise.
Not at all, Wolf. And when he said each of us gets to choose how we participate in that, Rex Tillerson made a choice very early on that he was not going to play Donald Trump's game in terms of the taunts, in terms of, getting fired. You remember that I sat down with him earlier this year, and he said that he was going to stay through the year. That was a message to President Trump. His aides told me, if you want me to go, call me in and fire me like a man. And that didn't happen. And so I think, this is, as a secretary, everybody knows that had a very fraught relationship with this State Department. There were a lot of questions about his leadership, about some of the policies and the staff cuts, and not defending the staff budget in terms of the White House wanting to cut 30% of the budget. But in the end, Rex Tillerson has a lot of sympathy for the way that President Trump treated him. And I think, he's going out, I think when he talks about integrity, you always have your integrity. That's what people are saluting here right now. He did not have the accountability that he talked about. I thought there were a lot of contradictions in his remarks. He talks about accountability. He never thought that he did anything wrong, Wolf. He always defended the way, his leadership. He never really saw that he had a problem with the State Department rank and file. But in the end, what was more important to Rex Tillerson was his integrity and going out without any bitterness, without any meanness, going out like a gentleman. Certainly has a lot of bitterness personally towards this president and the way he was treated, Wolf.
Yeah, let's get John Kirby's reaction. He's a former State Department spokesman during the Obama administration. John, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I think Elise is right. He certainly is getting a lot of sympathy, and deservedly so, for the completely ungentlemanly way in which he was let go. No excuse for that at all. But I think it's important that we also remember his checkered tenure at the State Department. Won't go down as one of our best chief diplomats, didn't get the respect inside the White House that he really needed to get the job done and to speak for foreign policy with one strong voice. And he didn't really stand up for the career foreign service. We've seen many of them leave almost in droves. He didn't fight, as Elise said, for the budget. So it wasn't a real strong institutional patriarch in that and leader in that sense. So again, I feel for the guy for the way he was let go, completely abominable. But I do think as we look back on his time, we need to do so with very clear eyes about what didn't happen.
Yeah, he's getting a nice round of applause from the diplomats who have gathered over at the State Department, whether he did a good job as Secretary of State, whether he did a bad job as Secretary of State, whether he agreed with the president, disagreed with the president. He certainly deserved a more cordial send-off by the president rather than simply finding out about it in a tweet. That's what the president did, and there's clearly a lot of anger at the State Department over the way the outgoing Secretary of State was treated by the president.